Hello, I'm Dr. David Hornbrook, the Clinical Director of Education and Technology at Keating Dental Arts here in beautiful Irvine, California. And this is our weekly podcast under Dental Up. For those that haven't seen it in the past, Dental Up, all one word, .xyz. And we're doing some incredible things. And today's even going to add to that incredible list. We have an unbelievable person in the studio today, Gary Takacs. Hi, Gary.
Hey, David.
We've known each other a while now.
Gary
gets around, not in that way, but in a way that he's traveling and lecturing and educating doctors and their teams almost every week. But Gary and I, a lot of people don't know this. You know, you see my face in some magazine, you see Gary, and you think, I wonder if they know each other. And we do, not just through dentistry. We actually went to high school together. And that was the 70s, and you know, in the 70s you did all the things that your parents didn't want you to do. So we both had hair down to the middle of our backs, and we surfed a lot, and we played water polo and swam. So we'd known each other a long time. And then I went to college in a different place, and he went to college, and we kind of lost track of each other. And then in this small little world of dentistry, we got back together, and now we reconnected a while back, 10, 15 plus years ago, and it's been awesome.
Would you like to hear a sobering fact, David?
Maybe, I don't know.
We met 43 years ago.
I wasn't born.
Years ago.
43 years ago.
We met
as
right. Freshmen. We were incoming freshmen at Grossmont High School.
Great.
But it was 43 years ago. Now, there's not a lot of people in the world that I can say I've known for 43 years, but you're one of those.
Well, I only have one now. Other than my sisters, I guess, just you and my sister. So it's been awesome, and you've done incredibly well. I mean, you're very successful and you're doing some really cool things, and
thanks.
And we're going to talk about that. A lot of our listeners and people that are viewing as well have seen Gary's name or have seen him at one of the major dental meetings. He has his primary lecture is Dentistry Rocks.
Yeah.
I've seen that a couple of times. I had him as a guest speaker in some of my Hornbrook group and some of the cool things we did. And it's really cool because your energy is, as you'll see, is just, I mean, it's inspiring, and you just kind of want to sit on the edge of the seat and say, well, I want to be like him. I want to do the things that he's talking about.
Thanks.
And you're having a good time with that.
I'm having a blast with it. You know, we call the course Dentistry Rocks for two reasons. One is, pardon my enthusiasm, but David, dentistry rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, and I am so excited about it because you know this as well as I do, that and all of our viewers and listeners know this, that you have the ability to change people's lives every day. Every day.
And there's not many professions, and change it in a
that.
good way.
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah, we have the
is
ability to change people's lives every day. It could be something as significant as, you know, the patient that comes in to your office with a compromised smile.
Right.
I think the kids these days would call that a jacked up grill.
A jacked up grill.
Okay,
Yeah.
you see this every day in your practice. And
Right.
they come in with a very compromised smile, and through your skill and judgment and artistry, you transform that patient as far as their personality. You know, they might have been reserved. They might have been introverted, kind of shy because of some the way they felt about their smile. But through your and your team members' wonderful compassion and skill, you transform them, and you've seen them blossom.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
after that. And it doesn't have to be anything as significant as that. It could be a patient. You know, here we are on a Wednesday.
Right.
I bet this happened this week in your practice. I'll bet that this week you had a patient that just needed someone to listen to them.
Yeah, I see that all the time.
And
physicians have totally dropped the ball on that. When was the last time you went to the physician and they sat down across a table from you and actually said, what can I do to help you? It's like, why are you here? I got 30 seconds because I got 45 other patients just this 1 hour in my reception room. So, you know, we're in a unique opportunity. And for the listeners that maybe don't know you, aren't familiar, Gary is not a dentist, but, and it's a big but, you own you're part owner in two practices now. Two practices, and you have the opportunity to work with dentists all over the country every week. So, you know, we get sometimes people that we talk to that are in the dental field, and they throw out some dental terms because they heard about them somewhere. They're not sure what they mean. They say, "Oh yeah, I did a class 5," and it's or I saw it, and they don't know what the hell that is, right? But you do, and so as you talk about the things that we do, the things that I do as a dentist, as your partner does in the practice, I mean, you see that in your practices, your own practices, but in the practices that you coach.
You know this, David, that Arizona is one of those states where you don't have to be a dentist to own a practice. And 8 years ago now, it was May of 2007, I bought a practice, a dilapidated backwards fixer-upper and bought it in partnership with Dr. Paul Nielsen, a young dentist.
Okay.
He's a 2005 graduate of the University of Washington.
Okay.
And we bought this practice in May of '07, and the last 8 years we've been evolving that into our ideal practice. It's still a work in progress. We're
It's
not
called
done.
Life Smiles.
It's called Life Smiles.
Life Smiles.
We just made up a name. We liked the way it sounded. Life Smiles.
Yeah.
And it's called Life Smiles Dental Care. It's in Phoenix, Arizona. And the last 8 years, we've been working our tails off to develop that into our version of our ideal practice.
Right.
And then about 4 months ago, Paul and I bought a second practice. We had an
Very
opportunity to buy a practice in Tucson.
Okay.
Had a really sharp young doctor that we could plug in there. And we're now in the process of doing what we've done with Life Smiles with
Right.
this new practice
Nice.
in Tucson. And,
Nice. So you're going through the growing and the evolution that someone who is either starting a practice or someone that has a practice, and as things change, and we're going to talk about that today, as the evolution and the changes you have to make the right decisions, whether it be when you choose this certain lab or this material or hire this person. So, there's so much we could talk about, and the problem with this, my podcast, I call them treadmill podcast. It's 30 minutes because that's when you're done with your treadmill and you want to be done with the podcast. So, we could go 2 hours, but that's not going to work for us. If we go 40, we'll do it. If we go 25, which we won't, I'll just say we won't. But there's so many, there's so many things we can talk about, and this is our 12th now, and we've had some lab communication. We had Jack Hadley last week on social media, which is awesome. I knew you could talk about that, but we're not. The only really person that we've had the opportunity to talk to about building a team and structuring the things you have to look at in your practice is Steve Anderson. Steve from Crown Counsel. And he was unbelievable. He talked a little bit about team development, which was great because all of us, we're not good team managers because we don't have training. We become that by personality types, but we don't have that. So he was awesome. But something that we haven't really talked about are some things that I think are right up in your expertise. Not only owning a practice, because you got to look at your P&Ls, you got to look at numbers, you got to make decisions, but going into an office like mine or another office and say, listen, these are the changes you need to make, these are the things you're doing right and aren't. So 2 primary things I want to cover today. One is, I've known you did, I think I did a paper or a blog on the 7 things that you need to monitor in your practice. 7 important things. And I know even if we wrote those down or whoever's listening goes home and writes these things down, they would say, 4 of them I have never even thought about. So I think that's important. And then recently, and this is really important, is you've been on this kick about getting out from under the thumb or the shackles of insurance-based dentistry. And I mean, that's a tough one. I know, and I don't take insurance other than giving them a form and saying, here's a picture, here's a narrative. But for a lot of our listeners and viewers, insurance is a big deal for them, and they can just imagine, if 80% of their patients is the teachers union and all of a sudden they say, no more Concordia or whoever teachers union, and they lose 80% of their practice. But it works. It can work.
It can work. Well, can we start there?
Absolutely. Let's start with that.
Yeah. So when we bought this practice 8 years ago, one of the things we quickly discovered as we took over ownership and stewardship of the practice is we discovered the practice was overrun with PPO plans, like so many practices are. It was literally overrun. And we came in, and Paul is an industrious, hardworking young dentist. We lavished some TLC, some love and attention on this practice, and we quickly started to grow this practice that was stagnant.
Right.
And as we grew, the impact of the adjustments was overwhelming. Is it okay if I talk about numbers?
Yeah.
So in August of 2007.
Now these aren't fish stories, though.
These are not
Yesterday
fish
it
stories.
wasn't 1,000.
No,
Today it's 10. Okay, just checking.
But that one fish barely fit in the back of the truck.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But
A semi, of course.
No,
or was it a train?
There we go.
Yeah.
By August of 2007, so 3 months into our ownership, we had a month where we produced $70,000 and we collected $45,000. And on the surface, it might look like we have a collections problem, right?
Right.
So Paul came to me, and we have a pretty simple business arrangement. He does the dentistry, and I do the business.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather have your job on some days.
But he came to me and said, Gary, I think we have a collections problem because we produced $70,000 this month and we collected $45,000. And I said, Paul, I really don't think we have a collections problem. Our team's doing a great job of collecting at time of service. We're filing the claims electronically. We've got a really buttoned down system to make sure we're submitting the claims properly for adjudication. And I don't think we have a collections problem. I said, well, then what is it? And I dug a little bit deeper and discovered that the $70,000 that we produced was gross production. That was our UCR fees. We had $30,000 of adjustments that month.
Yeah.
So if you do the math, you take your 70, subtract 30, we actually produced in adjusted production $40,000.
Right.
My team deserved a pat on the back because they pulled a $5,000 rabbit out of their pocket.
Yeah, that's right.
They over-collected $5,000. And David, I want, if may I share a piece of advice with our viewers and listeners
Absolutely.
that is worth the
That's
time?
that's why we have you here. Share advice.
So from this moment forward, I want you to think about those insurance adjustments as a marketing expense. A marketing expense. Why is that? Because you're paying the insurance company to provide you patients. Now, David, I remember in high school, you were pretty good at math. Can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
So
Let me get my. I got to get my iPhone.
You won't
here.
need it on this one, and you can call a friend on this one if you need to. But David, if you accept my definition of thinking of your adjustments as a marketing expense,
Right.
and I spend $30,000 as we did in August of 2007, annualize that for me. What am I spending on an annual basis on marketing?
Yeah, $360,000.
$360,000. I knew you'd get that right.
Yeah. I had someone. I called ahead and I have this little earpiece.
There we go.
Teleprompter like Obama.
But that was a breakthrough for me because I took one look at that and said, oh my gosh, we could spend a fraction of $360,000 and produce a better result. So from that moment forward, we made the decision to either negotiate with the insurance companies to get an acceptable fee schedule, or we were going to resign. And this didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of time. I want to emphasize this. This was not, some knee-jerk, decision that we woke up and said tomorrow we're not going to accept.
And too many people do that.
Right.
Yeah.
It was calculated, very calculated. And over a period of time, we reduced our insurance dependency to today, we accept one PPO plan, Delta Premier. In the state of Arizona, you can be a Delta Premier provider and not be a Delta PPO provider.
Yeah.
And we negotiated our Delta Premier fee. And it's a negotiated fee. It's higher than the standard Delta Premier fee. And I'm not happy with those adjustments with Delta, but they're palatable. I can deal with those.
Right.
But we literally resigned from all of the other PPO plans over the course of time. It didn't happen overnight. We did it over time.
Right.
One of the first things we did, for example, David, I calculated the number of new patients that came from each plan. MetLife, for example.
Right.
By the way, I can get on my soapbox a little bit about MetLife. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
They were the most caustic insurance company that we dealt with. We discovered that every time we did a crown on a MetLife patient, it cost Paul and I $138. So you mentioned you had Steve here to talk about team building.
Right.
I'd like to share how we got our team involved in this. So came into a team meeting when Paul and I did the math and determined every time we did a crown on a MetLife patient, it cost us $138. I brought in a crisp $100 bill to our team meeting. And I shared with the team, I said, that front desk drawer that every office has that is loaded with sticky notes and pens? I'm sure you have one.
No, we got two of those.
So I said, let's take that drawer out. Let's dump it out. Let's dump out the sticky notes and pens. And let's fill that drawer with crisp $100 bills. And every time a MetLife patient comes in, let's hand that patient a $100 bill and tell them to go somewhere else. I'm being facetious about it, but in fact, that would have been a good business move for Paul and I because it would have cost us less to hand the patient a $100 bill and tell them to go somewhere else than it would have been to provide them that crown. When I shared it with the team in that graphic way, it was like a light bulb went off, and they realized that, oh my goodness, this doesn't make sense. And it was kind of fun because what we did at that point, we have a philosophy with our team. I want my team members to be the best paid in dentistry. I want them to be the best paid. Now it has to be in a model that works for them as well as works for us. So our team members knew that if the practice was losing money on these PPO plans, the likelihood that they'd be able to get raises, that they'd be able to get bonuses, that they'd be able to receive the benefits of the practice were diminished. So they were in it with both feet. They were, in some ways, they pushed Paul and I to reduce some of these plans because they realized it didn't make any sense. Well, back to the story of MetLife. When we did the calculation, we determined that we had 5 new patients a month that came to us through MetLife. They either found us in the book or they found us online that we were a provider with MetLife. So what we did is we developed another marketing strategy to produce 5 new patients a month. Once we had a consistent marketing strategy that would produce 5 or more new patients a month, then we could pull the plug on MetLife and not miss anything. And then the next thing that we did is we developed a very specific strategy to retain as many of those MetLife patients as possible. This gives me a bridge to talk about another tip that I think our listeners will appreciate. We're now out of network with all but one plan. And every day we get phone calls from our office, do you accept my insurance? You do as well, correct? I believe that the way that call is answered has everything to do with your success. And sadly, many team members don't have the training or skills or haven't been provided the proper resources to answer that question properly. May I share with you how we answer that question in our office? So if that call comes in, and let's say it's David, and David calls Carly and says, do you take my insurance? Carly would say, first of all, thanks for your call. We love seeing new patients in our practice. My name's Carly. Who am I speaking with?
It's David.
David,
do you take my insurance?
It's great to meet you by phone. I can't wait to meet you in person. I want to answer your question very specifically. By the way, what insurance do you have?
MetLife.
MetLife. Although
I want a $100 bill. That's the only reason I'm coming.
Although we are not a contracted provider with MetLife, you can absolutely use your insurance benefits in our practice. In fact, when you come in, you're going to meet Lori. Lori's our insurance expert. She does everything possible to help you maximize your insurance benefits. In fact, we have many patients that have MetLife. By the way, David, do you like mornings or afternoons?
I just want to make sure there's $100 still in the bill, still in the drawer,
But you get the
no, I absolutely get it, because the typical answer would be no.
No, and clunk.
Yeah, and then they're
no
gonna look
else.
around,
or they fumble around with it, and patients can come to you outside of network. And we have a lot of, first of all, we had massive retention after we resigned from plans. We had very high retention of our patients. Now, I want to be very candid with you. Did we lose some patients when we went on a network? The answer is yes. Yes, we did. However, the number with each plan was fewer than we expected. And by the way, I've repeated this in practices all over the country. This is not unique to our practice. One of the cool things about owning a practice, I wanted to own a practice because I wanted to have a learning and teaching laboratory. I wanted to have a test kitchen where we could test concepts out. I could test it on my dime, and then I could report back to audiences when I'm speaking and clients that we're working with what worked and what didn't work. And I thought it would be useful to own a practice, and I have to tell you that it has so far exceeded my expectations. If I'm lecturing on a Friday, I'll typically have 2 or 3 new slides on things I learned this week in my own practice.
So we look at your model. So you had some income coming in, right? So you, if that was a brand new practice, you're not going to say, it cost me $360,000 a year. So instead, I'm going to take $300,000 and I'm going to do a marketing program. I'm a new practitioner. I don't have $300,000, right? So the model of a young practitioner, and I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine, Semper Energy, just built a building in downtown San Diego, and that's our new energy building, right? And they actually have Delta, the one that's worse than a PPO. It's Delta something, DO or so, whatever it is. And it's 2,000 employees, and there's no dental practice in downtown San Diego. So he found an office that only did all on 4s, all on 5s, and they're kind of just in and out. So no general dentistry, and people would come in because it's a transient community downtown. They'd come and say, do you guys take our insurance? And they say, no, we don't take insurance. In fact, we don't do fillings and we don't do cleanings, right? So he decided to go into this office and say, you know what, the practice is here. There's no value to your practice, right? What if I utilize your practice? I either pay you a little bit per month or you get a percentage of my production, and I'm going to try to grab one of those 2,500 Sempra people.
They're right next door?
Yeah. So his model is totally different than like what my model or what you did. He has no income. And he says, I'm just going to reach out and I'm going to grab onto all the plans and then try to at least get some money, then hopefully put TLC into it and retain the patients that are worthwhile in retaining. All right, so let's use that model as an example. So I'm coming to you, I'm saying, Gary, I know you've worked with a lot of practices. I need some help here. I have this facility that I have no money. It's not costing me a lot of money, but I have no money. And I've got this building across the street that are all people looking for someone who takes their insurance.
Yeah. I would politely disagree with the strategy.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Once you move down the path of being an insurance-dependent practice, it's a slippery slope. It's a quagmire. You can get absolutely caught up in that quicksand and that.
But every practice has done that.
Oh, everyone does.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that too, right? And slowly, used to be a Delta. I'm not even a premier provider anymore.
But it's a quagmire. It's much harder to extract yourself from that quagmire than it is to get on the right path right from the beginning. So what I would do in this case, and what a brilliant move to go where there aren't dentists. You know, I mean, what a great move. And I don't know what the numbers are of the people that work downtown in San Diego, but I know that it's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I would figure out a way to market, and I would do it grassroots. I would figure out a way to market to that captive audience that's within walking distance. I know downtown San Diego.
Right.
They're within walking distance of this dental practice. Rather than going down the route of subscribing to all these plans and then trying to figure out how in the world they can make that work when they're being subjected to 35, 40, and even deeper percentage discounts than that. You know, I think our biggest challenge...
Hey, here's his number, call him.
I think our biggest challenge in dentistry, David, and correct me if you feel differently, but I think our biggest challenge is helping patients value what it is we do for them. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, when patients come to us with an insurance mentality, Doctor, I'm only going to have this done if my insurance covers it. And by the way, that patient could span socioeconomic definitions. That could be a very wealthy person.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we see that all the time. Yeah, does my insurance cover this? Dude, you drove up in a Bentley and you live in Rancho Santa Fe and your home is $28 million.
And
Who cares?
You only want to have...
You don't want roof planing because it's going to be $125 out of pocket. It's like, really?
We see that as well.
Yeah,
you know,
all the time.
And, you know, we're on the border of Scottsdale. In Paradise Valley, we see that. You know, we see that all the time. And I think our biggest challenge is helping patients that value their health. And now... A good friend of mine, Ashley Latter. Ashley is a friend of mine from the UK. And I'm going to use a quote that Ashley has taught me. And the quote that he taught me is money the issue or is it an issue? And I believe that in many cases, money is an issue.
Right.
It's not necessarily the issue. So, for example, one of the things that we did was created our own in-office membership plan for patients that don't have insurance. So they pay an annual fee. It provides, that annual fee covers their 2 visits every year, that we provide a cleaning, we provide x-rays, we provide comprehensive exams. And then we wrote our fee schedule, a custom fee schedule that Paul and I determined, and our discount on that fee schedule is somewhere between 10 and 15%, depending on the fee. I'm not happy with that 10 and 15%, 10 to 15% discount, but it's way better than the 35, 40, 45% discount that was on the PPO plans. Right. That way we can roll the red carpet out and let them know that we welcome them. We'd love to see people.
So since we've been throwing out numbers, so because I know everyone's going to say, I wonder what he charges, So what is that? It's a yearly fee or do they pay it monthly? So if I came and said, hey, Dr. Gary, I don't have any insurance, but you know I like this place. What can you do for me?
We literally David, we love to see patients. We love to help patients that don't have insurance. We're family people. We understand. You know, I understand budgets. David, I'm not embarrassed to tell you that there's been times where there's been more month than money. You know, I get that. You know, and so we're happy to help people. Help our patients.
So how does that work in your practice?
So we've created a membership plan. You can't call it insurance, by the way. It's called a membership plan. And in our practice, we charge $197 for the first person and $147 each additional person.
And that's per year.
And that's per year.
And that
covers their 2 hygiene visits.
Okay.
It covers x-rays. And by the way, we don't get cheap with those. We'll take a full mouth series. We'll take a pan. We need to have the records. And, you know, we're doing it all digitally. So what's our expense on those radiographs? So we are very generous in the coverage of those records that we need. It covers the exams. And then we have a fee schedule that we put together that varies between 10 and 15% depending on the service. So if you need treatment, if you're part of our membership plan, then you receive the special fee schedule that's somewhere between a 10 and 15% discount. But it's a way to symbolically roll the wet red carpet out. Now, we're also in a fairly transient area. You are as well. People move around. That membership plan only applies to our office.
Right.
So when they move 5 miles away, they don't change dentists. They keep coming to us because that's where that membership applies for. The other thing we discovered, David, and this is a dirty little secret the insurance companies don't want you to know about. We resigned from over 30 plans. When we over
it's a lot of plans.
It's a lot of plans. I didn't know there were that many.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
But we discovered that 66% of the plans that we resigned from paid us more when we went out of network.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Does that make any sense?
It's crazy.
On a rational, logical level, does that make any sense?
Oh, it doesn't.
No.
I mean, you talked about the discount. It always amazes me because, of course, physicians they're so embedded. Medicine is so embedded into insurance. And, I went to the doctor's several weeks ago, and, he got blood work and got all this stuff done. And it's like $197, and it said discounted $185. So my bill was like $12. And at the end, it was like, shoot, $1,800 for all this? And then I look and it was discounted, so I only owe $139. It's like, that's ridiculous. And our insurance is kind of like, a lot of insurances are as well. Like
right.
You're losing money.
Yeah.
Even though you say, oh, look, I produced $100,000, because that's what it looked like on the books. It looked like they just did $1,500 worth of medicine on me.
Well, your expenses are indexed at the gross production.
Yeah,
your expenses.
Absolutely.
If you back in August of 2007 when we produced 70, our expenses were indexed at 70, and yet our revenue was indexed at the 45 that we actually collected our income. But I have to tell you, of all the different decisions that Paul and I have made, the most important strategic decision that we made was to break free from the shackles of insurance. Now, David, let me share an addendum to that story. We started this process in July of 2007. A year later, August of 2008, 13 months later, the economy went upside down. Right. You know that. You were affected in Southern California. Right. We were deeply affected in Arizona. There were 1,800 general dentists in Maricopa County prior to the downturn in the economy. It's a big county geographically and also population-wise. Right. We know from public records that 400 of those are gone. They bankrupt, foreclose, or just close their door. And if you do the math on that, that's 1 out of 4.5 practices failed. We not only survived and continued to grow during that time period, we figured out how to thrive, during that time period. Right. And I'm not saying that to boast. I'm saying that as a hopeful message for our listeners and viewers to realize that if we could do this in Phoenix, Arizona, when the economy was upside down, then I'm sure they can have success doing this where they are, because I can't think of a more cataclysmic perfect storm of things that were happening, and we navigated that. But one of the coolest things is as we started to attract patients that were not insurance dependent. In other words, they were now choosing us for reasons other than you're on my plan. We weren't on their plan. Right. So they're choosing us for other reasons. They started to choose us because of the content on our website. They started to see it and say, oh, wow, it looks like they know what they're doing. They embraced the technology. They were choosing us because they said, we want to go to an office that has state-of-the-art technology. And when we started to attract patients that were choosing us for reasons other than we're on their insurance, magical things began to happen.
Oh, yeah. And that's where the creating value. Especially in 2009, 2010, I mean, it was all the discretionary dentistry went down the tubes. People thought the sky was falling. Things have changed. Things have changed a lot now. I mean, the economy is much better. In San Diego, we're doing really well. But you look at Ritz-Carlton, you look at Nordstrom's, you look at Four Seasons. I mean, they're all having record years, and it's not because you're going to sleep any better, necessarily. It's because you feel better when you go, and you feel really good when you leave, and you want to talk about it. Yeah. And I think that's where we need to be with dentistry. And I mentioned earlier the physicians have totally screwed that up. Yeah. There's because they've got in bed with insurance. And, they say anytime you get in bed with something, you kind of get screwed, right? So, they got screwed, and they are so heavily embedded in it that they can't get out.
I read a statistic the other day, David, that said the average general practitioner, MD, sees about 100 patients a day. And if you do the math on that, figure out how many minutes they have with each patient.
They come in, they say hi, and Susie gives you the shot, or Roland takes your blood pressure, and the doctor comes and says, whatever my PA said or my nurse, do whatever they say because I don't have time.
But the customer service aspect of that has just disappeared. It's absolutely. Yeah. And I have to this day a wonderful mentor, Dr. Omer Reed.
Oh yeah, I know. He was at my last slide. I just lectured in Phoenix a month ago.
Oh,
and he was there,
cool.
But he had to leave. He had some call that he left before I actually got to talk to him. So if you talk to him, tell him I said hi.
I will. He's been a friend of mine for over 30 years, and Omer taught me that dentistry is a people game. And I think the way to succeed with reducing insurance dependence in your practice is to provide such incredible care, such incredible customer service, treat patients so well that they simply wouldn't want to go anywhere else. They don't. There's a segment of our population, and I happen to believe that it's a large segment. They want to go to a dentist and a dental office where they're being taken care of by people who they know, like, and trust. Not everybody.
Absolutely.
For some people, dentistry is a commodity.
Right.
Is that true?
Oh, absolutely.
A crown's a crown's a crown, right?
Right. Yeah.
In their mind.
Yeah, and absolutely. And, you know, we're kind of getting toward the end of the treadmill run, which I can't believe. I thought it was like 7 minutes, and it's almost 30.
Could we make it a more of a cardiac treadmill run on this one? Could we?
I think this is going to be a marathon.
Okay.
It's not going to be a 10K, because I'd be running a little faster. So slow
Maybe
down.
maybe half marathon.
Slow down. Start walking. Put the treadmill on a little bit of an incline. You know, two things that I've been thinking about as you're talking, and we had Damien McDonald. Do you know Damien McDonald? So Damien is the president of Kerr Cybran, and he brought up some issues you don't think about. One we do think about, and that's the DMSOs, corporate dentistry. They have an unfair advantage. You know, they come in and you know, if I was a Dentsply rep and I said Aquasil's $40, you know, they would say, well, I own 250 practices. I have 900 dentists.
$40 anymore.
We'll pay 70. And Dentsply says, okay. And then they come to you or me as a single practitioner and they say 140. And I'll say, can I pay 90? And they say, screw you.
Yeah.
You're paying 140. So they have that unfair advantage that their cost of doing business is less, right? So when you've got the insurance-based practices or the practices that are trying to chase down the fee, and we see that at Keating Dental Arts too, we're never going to compete with a Chinese crown, ever. You know, we charge $99 for a high translucent bruxer. I mean, that's an unbelievable price, half of a PFM. You know, we talked about it earlier. The most expensive thing we do in our lab is a gold crown, then a PFM, then an EMAX, then an Empress, and the least expensive is our bruxer. And bruxer used to be opaque and ugly, and now they're translucent.
What a great value, by the way.
Unbelievable, $99. But we're not going to...
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, no problem. It's a great restoration. But we're never going to compete with a Chinese crown. I mean, it's just... And we're not going to be able to compete maybe with a lab down the street, right? But what we can compete with is customer service, education, doing the things that make patients, doctors, feel good. So DMSOs, I want to talk a bit about that quickly and what's your take on that, because we're seeing, I mean, California, you know, Pacific Dental Services, and in the Midwest, Heartland now owns 450 practices. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Second is women in dentistry. And this is something that, you know, I heard statistics several years ago, you know, that they, on average, about 60% now of graduating seniors are women, right? Graduating dental students. So they're coming into our dental marketplace, which is awesome. But on average, they practice about 8 days a year, and they average about 2 to 2.5 days a week, which is different than, you know, I've been in practice 28 years, 4 days a week, and I'm going to probably practice another 28 years. So that's changing things a little bit. The second was, that I thought was interesting, we won't get into this, is the whole ergonomics deal. You know, how you know, Damien in Kerr, that's Pelton and Crane, how they've got to go back and redesign equipment based on someone that is more petite. And that could be holding a curing light or a handpiece. I mean, those things I just don't think about as a manufacturer. But, you know, let's talk a little bit about where you see the role of the DMSO, the DMOs, corporate dentistry,
right,
and how it's going to affect practices like mine and yours.
Corporate dentistry has an advantage, and I would actually characterize it as an unfair advantage on both ends. On the revenue end, they're able to negotiate higher fee schedules with the insurance companies because they're negotiating on behalf of hundreds of practices as opposed to one practice. Mm-hmm. You know, what leverage do you have when you contact an insurance company, as Dr. David Hornbrook?
Well, I have my handsome face and my charming
well,
smile,
sure you do.
But that's about it.
But what do they need you?
No, absolutely they don't.
No. But think about, you know, whether it be Pacific or Heartland or Aspen or whatever.
Right.
And they're negotiating for hundreds of practices. And in many of the places they're located, the insurance companies need them because they ultimately need to have providers. You know, think about
a
this.
lot of them are small towns, Bakersfield, Fresno.
Yeah.
I mean, the way
Somehow
California
the whole table got turned in insurance, because if you think about it for just a minute, at a very basic level, the insurance company needs you. Without you as a provider, they have no policy to sell.
Right.
You know, so remember that. Just remember that.
Right.
But the insurance company, the DMSOs have an unfair advantage because on the revenue side, they're able to negotiate a higher fee schedule because the insurance companies need them. Right. And then on the expense side, they're able to negotiate lower costs with their vendors because they're, again, buying in scale, and they have the economy of scale. Now, how do you compete against that? And when we talk about group practices, DMSOs, David, I think one of the statements I need to make about that is it's not fair to paint them all with the same brush.
Right. No,
just like it's not fair to paint, you know, private practitioners with the same
Right.
branch. The truth is, solo dentists, there's good, bad, and ugly.
Right.
And the same is true with the group practices.
Right.
But even the best group practices only do a mediocre job of customer service.
Mm-hmm.
They only do a mediocre job on their best day.
Yeah.
Best day.
Well, remember, that's not their goal. Their goal is
No,
to make money.
their goal is to make
But
money.
I want people to like me. I want people to like
Yeah.
my practice. I want people to talk about me. A lot of the group practice, they're venture capitalists that are saying, listen, you got 3% that you can buy. I have a friend that works for me,
Yeah.
and they ran out of dental materials.
Yeah.
Something he uses every single day, and he went to his assistant and said, I need to order this, and they said, sorry, we're already at our 3% this month. They had 7 more days in the month, but because they had already hit 3%, because this big venture capitalist, someone who knows how to run a business, said, you're done.
But if you turn that to an advantage, let's turn it to an advantage. The best DMSO on their best day is about a B minus when it comes to customer service. Frankly, in your practice or my practice, we wouldn't accept that on a daily basis. It might happen now and again, but we won't accept that. And we have a competitive advantage to deliver unbelievable, customer service. One of the things, it's very simple, and David, you heard this 25 years ago, but it's still not being done today. One of the things we do is our doctors, Paul and Tim, they call our patients at 7 o'clock in the evening. They call any patient that received a shot that day in our practice. If they received an injection, they get a call from the doctor. 85. We have data on all this. 85% of those calls go to voicemail. Frankly, I wish 100% went to voicemail. They wish
I do that as well. Lots of times I wish it went to voicemail.
But when Dr. Hornbrook calls, and let's say I was your patient, I'm sure you're going to call and say, "Hey Gary, it's Dr. Hornbrook calling. I like to call my patients on evening of treatment. I was just giving a call to see how well you're doing." And now you can turbocharge this. David, you know that my youngest daughter, Callie, is a sophomore at University of Arizona.
Right.
And that might have come up in our conversation. And when you call me that night, you might say, hey, by the way, I looked at the calendar and realized that Callie's going to be heading off to U of A in a couple weeks. Please wish her well for me. When you do that, the emotions that are involved with that and the furthering of our relationship is something no DMSO can compete with.
Absolutely.
So, doctor, a simple thing that you can do, develop your own method for doing this. I happen to love technology, so I would do it digitally, but come up with some way to capture the notes and the details about your patient's life so that when you make those phone calls, you can incorporate that. For example, I know that your son Brighton is about to start his senior year at Grossman High School. If I was to call you and say, hey David, Dr. Takacs is calling, I just wanted to call and see how well you're doing. By the way, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say I'm calling to see if you're having any problems.
Right.
No, you're not having any problems. Yeah. Hey, I just like to call my patients on evening treatment to see how well you're doing. By the way, I noticed that Brighton's about to be a senior at Grossman. Would you wish him a great season for me?
Yeah. Yeah, anything personal. The other thing, too, that I found, because I do make those calls, is to write down the spouse's name. So I take home a sheet on my, so my schedule has the phone numbers, and I make them write down the spouse's name because I can remember if I saw what tooth, I could tell everything about your life based on a tooth that you told me about, but I'm not going to remember your name. And if you and your wife have been patients in my practice for 15 years, and I call to see how she's doing, and you answer, and I'm like, is Jill there? Oh, who's that? This is Dr. Hornbrook. Oh, hi, Dr. Hornbrook. It's like, crap. I've known this person for 20 years in my practice, and I can't remember their name. So she'd say, hey, is this Steve? Hey, Steve, this is Dr. Hornbrook. How's Jill doing? And it's things like that that are going to separate us, and you're absolutely right.
And that gives us a competitive advantage. There isn't a DMSO, in the country that does a good job of that. And that's not their business. No one's focusing on that.
That isn't their business.
And so I really think the takeaway for people watching this and listening to this is our advantage is developing the rapport and relationship with patients. We talked about Omer a minute ago. I learned this from Omer. David, you and I are old enough to remember what Rolodexes are.
Right.
Remember those Rolodex files?
I have one.
In the early 80s, Dr. Reed had a Rolodex file. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's a circular file that's organized alphabetically. And Omer had 5x7 cards on his Rolodex file. So in addition to his charts back then, because it was analog, it was charts.
Right.
Dr. Reed also had a card of every one of his patients. And as he would learn about the details about patients' lives, about their dog's name, their spouse's name, their kid's name, their hobbies, their interests, he would scribble those down between patients on his Rolodex card. Now, what he did next was really the most important step. He came in 30 minutes before the morning huddle every day, printed out the daily schedule, and then went through the Rolodex cards to reorient himself to the patient. Now, Omer happens to have a very good memory. He has a great memory today.
Right.
In his 80s, he has a fantastic memory. But, let's face it, if you're taking care of 3,000 or 4,000 patients, you can't necessarily remember everything.
Right.
So he would do his homework, and he would prepare. And so when he came in to do his hygiene exams, he'd slap you on the knee and say, "How's Brighton doing?"
Right.
My goodness, I saw that video the other day when he did that vertical leap. Was it 48 inches? Oh, my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right.
That connection.
People want to feel important.
Yeah.
The bottom line. Also, the disadvantage of some of these DMOs is you're not going to go and see the same dentist every single time.
Yeah.
So,
and for some, if dentistry is a commodity to patients,
it's not a big
doesn't
deal.
matter.
It's not a big deal.
But I think the other advantage that we have, and David, I know you know this, but I think that the mouth is one of the most intimate places, on the body to receive treatment.
No, absolutely.
I could only think of one other area that might be
The ear? Yeah.
Well, it's something like that.
Yeah.
But let's face it, there's between nerve endings and the emotions that are involved in that. For many, and we know that 49% of the adults in the United States put off a visit to the dentist because of fear.
Yeah.
And so if we can connect with them on an emotional level and really master emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a topic I'm spending a lot of time with our clients now. How to read patients' emotions, how to respond to their emotions, how to be emotionally intelligent as the leader of the practice.
Right.
And if we can master that, the way that can impact the practice is unbelievable. And it's an advantage that just is never going to exist in the DMSO model.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So pardon my enthusiasm, but
that's all right. That's why I invited you here, and I appreciate it. But we are going to have to wrap up. So we didn't get to go through the 7 things you need to monitor in your practice, but we'll have you back.
I'll come back.
Yeah. So Gary Takacs, Takacs. How can they get? So you have a website. You have a really good website with blogs and some videos. And
Takacs Learning Center. I would
Takacs
have named it after myself, but there was a marketing company I worked with years ago that said if we called the company Takacs Learning Center, it made a nice acronym, TLC.
Yeah.
We like to think every practice could use a little TLC.
Absolutely.
So Takacs, Takacs, learningcenter.com. David, you also know that I'm a fellow podcaster.
Yes,
I've had you on
absolutely.
my show a number of
Absolutely.
times. I'd like to invite our listeners to cross over and listen to
Absolutely.
my podcast as well.
And
I'm going to share this with
what's the address?
That's called the Thriving Dentist Show.
Thriving Dentist Show.
So if you go to iTunes or you go to Stitcher Radio and type in Thriving Dentist Show, you'll find that podcast. Today we published our 184th episode.
Nice.
And you've been on
This
two
is
of those.
12. Oh yeah, for
we're
of
gonna
ours.
get you
Yeah,
back.
absolutely. Well, we always have so much to talk about.
We do.
We don't give much of a message, but we have a lot to talk about.
We still have to go back and talk about that surf trip we took, and I don't remember it fully, but maybe it'll come back to us when we talk about it.
Yeah, it's been a while. I still go down to Mexico almost every week. I went last weekend. I'll go again this week and surf the same spot. The problem is K55s where we used to always camp and surf. Most incredible homes. It's all built up
What
now.
about Salsa Puertas? Salsa Puertas still there?
Salsa Puertas you can't get to anymore because they're building gorgeous homes down. And I tried to go down, they wouldn't even let me down the road, so they had a little guard shack. But things have changed, right? With us, with Mexico, with life, all good things.
Hair.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't have any, and I'm losing mine, but that's all right. That's all right. As I tell my sons, you change the things you can, and you try to fix the things that are difficult or impossible. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching or listening, whatever you're doing right now. Again, we're in Irvine, California, Keating Dental Arts. I certainly invite you to come visit us. We're about 5 miles from Disneyland, 10 miles from Newport Beach. If you're ever in the Southern California area, you're more than welcome to come visit us at Keating. We're doing some incredible things, not only in our podcast, like today, and we had so much fun, but also in videos, educational opportunities. You can go to dentalup, all one word, .xyz. Hope I see you soon. Thanks for listening and watching.